Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Military Spouse to Millionaire. I have to be honest, I have been trying to record this episode for like 2 days. 2 days, and this is my third take trying to record this episode. And what keeps happening is I get really in the weeds and start like over explaining all of these points that I'm trying to make. So today's episode is going to be about reasons people give me for why they can't buy a house here or why they think they can't buy a house here. And there are about 10 or 11 that I quickly have jotted down. There are probably more. I mean, the reasons are very personal or sometimes, change from person to person, but these 10 or 11 are pretty like SOP common reasons that I get. And what keeps happening is I start talking about one of them, and the next thing you know, it's been like 40 minutes and I still have 8 more left on this list. So this episode is designed to be a rapid fire, just sort of, I'm going to tell you what they are. I'm going to give you a quick why they're incorrect or why you might want to think twice about just accepting it as a fact. And then, obviously, if you have questions, if you want to discuss any of these in more detail, or if you have a concern or a fear or whatever that I might be able to address that I don't get to here, reach out to me, guys. I've had so many people emailing me, sending me messages in Messenger and Instagram and TikTok from these podcasts, starting to engage with me, and I love it. So thank you so much for that. Okay, let's get started because it is my goal this time, third time's the charm. This time I am going to knock this out in 30 minutes. Well, 25 minutes now. Reason number 1, I can't make a profit when I sell in 3 years. Categorically untrue. I work only with military families. Most of my clients own only between 2 and 4 years, and 9 times out of 10 make a profit in that time. Obviously, anytime you invest in anything, there is no 100% guarantee that you're going to make a profit. However, in 3 years with the Hawaii real estate market, dollars to donuts, statistically speaking, I personally, when I bought my first home here in 2017, so pre-pandemic, owned it for 2.5 years, sold it, made a $65,000 profit. I had a family on the 8th of July. As I'm filming this, it's the 15th of July. On the 8th of July, I had a family who walked away after exactly 3 years with $80,000 of profit. Even if you want to cut that number in half or in half again, if you cut it in half, they made $40,000. If you cut it in half again, they made $20,000. If you cut it in half again, they made $10,000. How far down that rabbit hole do you want to hop to get to a place where you would reasonably be able to say, I bought a house in Hawaii and I didn't make any money? It's pretty extreme, and that's because our market here is so stable and so aggressive. We see about 5% appreciation year over year for the last 38 years. And quite frankly, even if you made no profit, let's pretend that you did own a home here, bought it, sold it, made nothing. That's no different than if you had rented or lived on post. So if you're considering renting or considering living on post, you should really be internally, in my mind, you should be okay with not making a profit because you're guaranteeing yourself no profit with either of those options. At least with buying, you stand a statistical likelihood of making some sort of profit, getting some sort of return on that investment. On to reason number 2. I can only use my VA loan once. Wrong. We've used our VA loan 6 times. You can use it as many times as you want. You can even use it more than once simultaneously. So you can buy a house, have it, keep it, rent it, move here to Hawaii, still with your other house, and buy another house. That will be a whole nother episode that I'm trying to talk my husband into doing with me to talk about the VA loan and debunking some myths and kind of sweeping some old conventions under the rug when it comes to VA loans. People think you can't buy foreclosures. People think the home has to be in perfect condition. All of those things are wrong, you guys. That's false information. So I will unpack that in a different episode. But yes, you can use your VA loan more than once. You should be using your VA loan every chance you get to build wealth and financial freedom for your family. Another one, I can't sell when I move, or what if I can't sell when I move? Statistically, that is not a problem. We always have more demand than supply for our market here. As an example, in the last 12 months, I did an MLS search before filming this the first time. And in the last year, 365 days. Mind you, during that time, Interest rates for VA loans in October of last year, when, Clayton was locking people's loans, he was locking them at 7%, which is the highest we've seen in our lifetime, but historically not out of the norm. And I'll explain that as one of the reasons, but I just kind of want to 7%, while yes, is way more than 2%, historically speaking, is not 13% and not that high. It's sort of average, actually, but I'll get to that. In the last year, even with interest rates having touched 7% in common areas where military families choose to live. So I'm talking Mililani, Waikele, Waipahu, Eva Beach, Kapolei, Makakilo, all of those sort of really popular areas that military tend to look in, live in, sell in, buy in. 1,668 properties, townhomes, condos, single-family homes have sold in the last year. 30 to 40 days on market, which means from the time you list a home until it goes into contract, it is about 1 month. We all know as military families, when we land here, when we are leaving. No one is calling me and saying, oh my gosh, I'm leaving the island in 4 weeks. People are calling me and they're saying, hey, you know what time it is. We leave in 6 months. What do we have to do to sell the house? And then we normally list the house about 2 to 2.5 months before you leave so that we backwards plan. And I put you on the plane leaving the island with a check from your profits and not a Hawaii mortgage payment. I'm single. This is a fun one. Your relationship or marital status should not be used as an excuse to not make a smart financial decision. It is my opinion that buying a home when you're getting tax-free money from the government for housing, investing that money in a home of your own instead of a home of someone else's is a smart financial decision. So whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're enlisted or an officer or male or female or whatever, it is still worth your time to at least talk to a real estate professional and get educated on the options available to you. Single service members buy homes with me all the time. Just because you're single doesn't mean you can't buy a house. I'm too young. This one I will spend a minute on because this one is the one that kind of gets to me the most, only because of the demographic that I work with. So working almost exclusively with military, I have a very hard time swallowing that pill because yes, I have worked. I have had clients literally 18, 19 years old, come right out of basic training, right out of tech school or AIT, and this is their first assignment, and they have purchased homes at 18 and 19 years old. And then they've sold homes with me a few years later at 21 or 22, and they've made $80,000 to $100,000. All of my listeners out there right now who are older than 21 or 22, I want you to think back to what 21 or 22-year-old you would have thought about or would have done with $80,000 to $100,000 that they made just spending BAH here in Hawaii. It is crazy. And in my opinion, those people have set themselves up for great financial success. If I had started buying houses in my 20s, well, earlier in my 20s, I think I was 28 when we bought our first house, Lord help me. If I had had 8 or 10 more years of home ownership and equity building and appreciation and passive income from rentals under my belt. The reason it bothers me, the reason that the excuse I'm too young kind of doesn't sit right with me is because I work with service members and I have a really hard time accepting the fact that you can tell me as a service member that you're responsible enough and mature enough and old enough to have signed up to serve our country and defend our freedoms and potentially go off to war and pay the ultimate price and sacrifice your life. You're old enough to make that level or caliber of decision, but you're not old enough to take tax-free money given to you by the government for housing and invest that in paying down a mortgage of your own versus a mortgage of someone else's. Because you guys, I hate to break it to you, when you're renting, you are paying a mortgage. You're still paying a mortgage. It's just not your mortgage. It's my mortgage as your landlord, or you're giving it back to the government living on post. You are still paying someone's mortgage. You're still paying a mortgage. If you're old enough to serve our country and fight to defend the American dream, you are probably old enough to participate in the American dream. And home ownership is still very much what people associate with the American dream. Moving on, this is an oldie but a goodie. I'm going to wait until the housing market crashes and then I'm going to buy a house. If you are waiting for this, you are going to keep waiting. People that have waited for this, you guys, have sat on the sidelines and missed out on 2% interest rates because they didn't want to get in bidding wars. They've now, if they're still sitting on the sidelines, they've now missed out on excellent sellers credits and concessions given by sellers in our market right now because interest rates went up. So now sellers are giving credits to buyers, which especially in our Hawaii market is unheard of because it's always such a seller's market here. People like this, people that use that particular excuse are very unlikely to ever pull the trigger on buying a home, in my opinion, because they're the people that in their minds have some really unattainable idea of what the perfect time to jump in the market is going to be. And I'm here to tell you that there's no perfect time. The perfect time to buy a house was yesterday. The second best time to buy a house is today. There is no perfect time. The market is always shifting, always changing, always swinging. Yes, interest rates were 2%. That wasn't good enough for some people because then they had to offer $50,000 or $60,000 over asking price and compete with 12 other offers to get a home. So that's what stopped them then. Now it's the interest rates being too high, even though there are sellers out there giving credit. Credit means cash, you guys. When I say credit and I'm talking about real estate, I mean cash. Sellers are giving credits to buyers, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, so that that buyer can use that credit to buy down their interest rate. I'm sorry, if you told somebody that bought a house in 2020 or 2021 and was bidding against 15 other people, if you had told that person that in 2 or 3 short years, sellers were going to be giving buyers $20,000, they would have not believed you. They would have had you checked into a mental health facility because it was so unfathomable. But here we are. And people are still sitting on the sidelines waiting for that perfect time. I think it might have been my husband that said to me from somebody that he heard it from, time in the market is better than trying to time the market. There is never going to be a perfect time. You just have to jump in. I only have one income. This is very, very common. 99% of every person in a year that buys a home with me, 99% of the time does so on the service member's income, credit score, debt to income ratio, just the service member's income. Because a lot of times as military spouses, as you all know out there, when we get to a new duty station, we don't have a job lined up. Sometimes, with remote working being more popular, sometimes people will have remote jobs or stay-at-home jobs that they, have or whatever when they get here, but that's not the norm. And also, furthermore, a lot of times people are getting pre-approved for more than they want to spend. So just because you're only on one income doesn't mean that you should think that you shouldn't or can't buy a house. People are 100% doing that. Shouldn't be something that just outright stops you from wanting to look into this. Something that I was just told day before yesterday, and I almost wanted to pull up the text and read them back and forth. But again, this gets a little long, so I'm just going to go through it really quickly. An excuse that people give me is, I want to buy a house, but I want to live on post for a year and get to know the island, and then I want to buy a house. This is bullshit. This never happens. The reason it never happens, there's a lot of reasons. So the reasons this doesn't happen, because moving sucks. You just got here. No one wants to move, get settled, get to know your neighbors. The kids get in school. You get familiar with your commute time in your neighborhood. No one then wants to pack up, move themselves, because the military is not going to do it. Move themselves, pay for the cost or endure the labor of doing that, just to know that in 2 more years, when your 3 years is up here, that you're going to move again. Nobody wants to do that. Getting here sucks. Moving sucks. No one wants to get settled for a year and then move. As far as getting to know the island, you guys have a minimum of 30 days of TLA when you first get here. You can drive around this island in about 2 hours. It is not that big. I can show someone between 5 and 7 houses in a day. One day of house hunting. I can spend 3 days, 4 days showing you all of Mililani, all of Eva Beach, all of Kapolei, all of anywhere on the island that you want to see and get familiar with, and we still would not use half of your 30 days that you have in TLA. And like I said earlier, there are common places where military families just choose to live for either logistical reasons or family-friendly reasons, kind of suburban reasons, schools. Like there are just kind of some set places where most people look. So it's not like you have that many options. I hate to put it like that, but the island is small. You can get to know the island for sure in the 30 days you have of TLA to be house hunting. That's why they give us that much time. Something else that sort of stops people from making this transition, living on post to buying, is the home prices tend to go up here, guys. Year over year, our appreciation is almost 5%, which means if you're looking at houses now and you decide to execute this plan, when you look at them in a year, if we've seen average appreciation, say you're looking at a $500,000 townhouse now, and in a year, you're like, hey, a townhouse in that same neighborhood I liked is up for sale, but it's $520,000 or $525,000. Most people do not love the fact that they're going to pay $20,000 or $25,000 more for the same house they saw for sale last year, $20,000 cheaper. And they've just missed out on earning $20,000 or $25,000 of equity that could have benefited them, but instead now they're going to pay $20,000 or $25,000 more for something they could have had cheaper a year ago. I can't afford it. Just a blanket, I can't afford to buy. Quite frankly, you as a consumer, love you guys, you don't know what you can afford to buy. You don't know how mortgage brokers, how lenders calculate your debt to income ratio. You don't know how they calculate your credit scores and what they look at. Obviously, they use FICO scores, but you as a normal consumer, and again, exceptions to every rule, you might be some really high-tech brainiac that does have a better understanding than most, but generally speaking, most people are on Zillow, which I understand is all you have access to right now. But that shit is wrong, okay? We just need to be very clear. Zillow is wrong. Zillow's Zestimates are not right. Zillow's mortgage calculator is not right. Zillow is wrong. I cannot speak for any mortgage calculators online. I don't know if they're compounding the interest daily correctly. I don't know if they're calculating zero money down because it's a VA loan. I don't know if they're calculating right now the seller's credits that I'm going to get you to buy down your interest rate. It is not right. If you want to know what you can actually afford, contact a real estate professional that will subsequently put you in touch with a mortgage professional, or do it the other way around for all I care. But contact a professional. Do not rely on the internet because it is wrong. Every day, people contact me or tell me I can only afford this much, and they are sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars off in what their payments would be, or they're not calculating the maintenance fees, or they think property taxes are ridiculously high here, because all of those things factor into your monthly payment and what you can afford. So please, I'm begging you, you don't know what you can afford. That is literally why I'm here. That's literally why Clayton has a job. It is his sole purpose in life to tell you what you can afford. And he doesn't have to do a full pre-approval and run your credit and do all the scary things. To do that, we can look at what your housing allowance is, and he can reverse engineer the numbers based on what your housing allowance is and tell you, hey, if the goal is to find a place that's within your housing allowance, roughly what ballpark price should we shop in? And that allows me to then set you up in the MLS which again is going to show you homes that are actually on the market and not half of them being in contract, like on Zillow. So please, 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 please utilize us as resources. That is why we're here. Zillow is wrong. Last but not least, I really flew through that this time, guys. I'm sort of proud of myself. The interest rates, the elephant in the room. Like I said earlier, yes, they're higher than they were. If anyone thought that the sweet 2% COVID interest rate was going to be the new norm, I'm sorry, you missed that train. Interest rates are no longer at 7%. And again, I'm not a mortgage broker. I'm not quoting interest rates, but I obviously hear Clayton have conversations with people locking interest rates, talking about the market right now. I think he is telling people that rates are around 6%. That obviously depends on your specific credit situation and blah, blah, blah. All of that sort of disclaimer stuff that I'm not a mortgage broker. The speed at which we got from 2% to 7% when the rates were 7%, I'll give it to you. That shit was wild. It was definitely enough to make your head spin. But that was also many, 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 many months ago, probably approaching a year ago, that we saw that happen. The rates go up that fast and that much. Historically, if you look at interest rates, they're pretty average right now. Yes, they're not 2%, they're not 3%, but they're also not 13% like they were in the 80s. And furthermore, just for a fun fact, if you look at the 80s, the market in the 80s here in Hawaii, when an average interest rate was between 10 and 13%, there were a lot of years where our market still gained value, which is amazing. Our market is so resilient here, and it's really just supply and demand and the military. We have every branch of service here, always providing a steady churning of people coming on and off this island that have guaranteed money for housing. And we are on an island, you guys. We cannot build more houses. The space we have, largely speaking, the homes we have is what we have. There are a few, very few new developments that get built, but we don't have the room to build more houses to accommodate the demand from the military, the demand from the local population, the demand from DoD civilians here supporting the military, foreign investors. There's just not enough houses, and that constantly makes our market very aggressive. So yes, I get it. Interest rates aren't what they used to be. However, get in now. Buy a house now when you can offer at asking price or slightly under asking price and get those credits from the sellers for the 2-1 buy down. I promise, in this little notebook is all of my podcasting gibberish, notes, whatever. I have a note in here to do a whole episode about the 2-1 buy down, what it is, why it's advantageous. In the long run, you marry the house. You date the interest rate. Buy the house now when you can get it at a good deal and with credits from the seller. And then sure, in a year when rates maybe dip down in the 5s, in the 4s, whatever, refinance. You can always refinance, but you're getting the house now at your advantage. And especially here in Hawaii, anytime you can be a buyer and have an advantage in the Hawaii real estate market, seize the opportunity because it is fleeting and it is not the norm. Okay, this is normally the part where I start to word vomit and get really off track, but I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to say thanks, guys. Please let me know if you want me to unpack any of these in more detail with you on another episode or personally. Reach out to me. Love you guys as always. Thanks so much. Like, follow, subscribe. You know the drill at this point. You guys mean the world to me.